Hi, friends. Welcome to Lights, Camera, Attractions, a Beyond the Turnstile podcast. This was our first episode, and we had a lot to say about Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones. We had some countries to mispronounce. We had some character names to mispronounce. We had a lot to mispronounce. And so we're breaking this apart into two episodes. So you can find part one here, where we discuss a little bit about our history with the franchise, a little bit about the movie, and then you can find the second half where we go into the conclusion of the film and the history of the theme park attraction in episode 2. Enjoy! You're listening to Lights, Camera, Attractions, a Beyond the Turnstile podcast original. Hey there, park hoppers. I'm the ancient native who couldn't stop carving ads for better long-distance service into the walls of Mara's temple, Derek.
And I'm Karen Allen's espadrilles, Kevin.
And together we are Beyond the Turnstile, your favorite Mickey Millennial maniacs. We have a passion for theme parks, haunts, and in this case, mystical temples.
Ooh, and boulders.
And Karen Allen. This is Lights, Camera, Attractions, the podcast where we discuss the history of theme park attractions.
And discuss the films that inspired them or were inspired by them.
This is our first episode ever, y'all. And not just
episode 1.
Not just our first episode of this podcast. This is our first podcast. And for me, my first time recording a podcast ever.
Mm-hmm.
So to start this off, this new venture for us, we are going to discuss one of our favorite rides and our favorite lands and our favorite theme park. And we're talking today about Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Forbidden Eye, better known as the Indiana Jones Adventure.
Look into my eye. That was good, right? That was a good Mara. That was great.
Was very impressive.
I do a good Sala too, but it feels really racist. So I'm gonna not do that.
Yep. I think you should trust your instinct on that one. That is not the right move.
Tourists.
This is an attraction that's inspired by the cinematic masterpiece? Question mark. We'll definitely dive into it today. Raiders of the Lost Ark. We selected this property because we both genuinely love the ride. And also, we're about to get the final cinematic installment of this franchise, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Harrison Ford has said pretty clearly, like in very strong old man language, he's like, "You're not making any more of these movies after I die, and this is my last one." So,
bet. Disney said bet.
Yeah, I don't know if Disney agrees. I think they've already announced like a Disney Plus series about young Indiana Jones. So, we'll see. We'll see if that comes true. I hope they honor Harrison Ford. He's such a national treasure. We should. Since we're all here for the first time, I'm going to lay out the premise of our podcast for you, so you can get sort of your bearings and understand what you're in for. So, the first part of the pod, we're going to discuss a little bit about our history with the IP, and then we're going to go into our beat for beat reactions to Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then after that, we will discuss the attraction that was inspired, or in this case, multiple attractions that were inspired by this film and the following sequels. And then we will, at the very end, give a little bit of space for us to do a 1-minute pitch, timed 1-minute pitch for us of what we would do if we were in Wet Enterprises. We were tasked with coming up with what the new Indiana Jones attraction is, and in a world or somewhere in the multiverse where the existing Disneyland attraction does not exist. So this would be
I'm excited for that part, because mine, I think you know what I'm gonna say in my elevator pitch, and you're not ready. You're not ready for what my elevator pitch is. I'm so excited.
I'm excited to hear it. My elevator pitch is half-baked, so we're definitely going to have, there's going to be some improv that happens when it comes time for mine.
Sounds good. Sounds great.
It's going to definitely be super good. There's no way that that could go wrong in any way. Um, so first, we're going to dive into our first section, which is the meet cute. Now that is not cute with a C, but cued with a Q. And this is about where we discuss how we first encountered this IP or the attraction, or however we first encountered this property, and then how we fell in deep love with it, the way you could say Marion Raven would, or Indiana Jones fell in love with one another in the film. Or
you could say that. That is a thing you could say.
You could say it. Should you? Is another question. Maybe a healthier dynamic.
Sure.
With a little more mutual respect. So, Kevin, tell me about the first time you encountered Indiana Jones.
Okay, so my first encounter with Indiana Jones was actually the attraction. It was Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Forbidden Eye at Disneyland. I am an only child, so I didn't have the luxury of growing up with like brothers older than me that were obsessed with like Indiana Jones. It was coming out like right around when we were born in the mid 80s. And so I didn't really like know anything about it. But I was a Disney kid forever. And I remember when it came out, and I still think all the time about those little AT&T cards that had, you know, the writing on it. And like I would write messages to myself because who else am I writing them to? In that code. And I felt it was so cool. And I thought that ride was so unbelievably bonkers. Like when it opened, it was just, it wasn't anything that I had experienced at Disneyland before. And, you know, having gone like my entire life, the ride vehicle was completely new. The special effects were completely new. And it didn't make me, like, I didn't rush out to go see the movies. I was like, oh, cool, Indiana Jones is Disneyland now. Great. And in fact, the first time I watched this movie all the way through was 2 days ago when I prepared for this podcast.
I was going to ask, I was like, I don't think we've ever, I think I've tried to get you to watch Raiders before, but
this
like
is
many...
dear listeners, let me let you in on a little secret here. Come close. This man has tried to make me watch all of his favorite films: Harry Potter, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, like the whole franchises. And I fall asleep through all of them. I don't think until recently, or maybe even like maybe the pandemic, when we were at home all of the time, did I watch any of those all the way through. I think I have seen the Star Wars Christmas special all the way through more times than I have seen any of the other like movies that you love. And for that, I am sorry, Derek. I apologize to you publicly in this forum.
You don't have to apologize, but I do think you've seen the new Star Wars because we saw them together in theaters. And I think you made it through most of those because you had thoughts.
I did have thoughts.
The impetus for this podcast, this is my entire rationale to get you to watch these movies finally and digest them. And it worked so far. We'll see.
It worked.
We're going to get to some bad movies that I don't think either one of us want to watch, but that's coming in a future episode.
So how did you first meet Indiana Jones? How'd you meet Dr. Jones?
Interestingly enough, I fell in love, quite literally, with Indiana Jones probably when I was like 5 or 6, somewhere around that age. It was around the time that Last Crusade came out. And I remember my dad taking me and my brother to go see it at a movie theater. And I don't think I'd seen any of the other movies at that point. I think we jumped in at Last Crusade. I hadn't seen Star Wars yet. Like, this was sort of one of my first introductions to the franchise, like the franchise format. And I loved it. I thought it was so exciting. I loved the adventure. I also, I think I loved Harrison Ford because he's very nice. Very nice to look at, and even at a young age, I may not have understood what that was, but I was like, what an interesting man. Let's look at him more. So I think that was definitely a factor. And then after I saw that movie, I fell in love with the other movies. I actually think I saw Raiders last, which is not the order I think anyone would recommend. Well, no, Crystal Skull I saw last. We don't
Is
talk
that the
about
one
her.
where that white lady sings in Chinese at the beginning?
That is Temple of Doom, where
Oh,
Steven Spielberg cast his wife, and she sings "Anything Goes" in Mandarin. I want to say, and I it's rough. It's not the best.
yeah,
There's a lot, exoticism in the Indiana Jones franchise is a real problem, including in the attraction. But
yeah,
I think if you can turn it off, turn your brain off just for a little bit, there's a lot there that has redeeming qualities.
sure.
Um, and then I didn't go, I went on the attraction probably a year or two after it opened. I was terrified because I was an absolute fraidy cat when it came to rides at that point in my life. And we went to Disney with a friend who hadn't been on it, and they talked me into it. And I loved everything about it. So much like you, I had never seen anything like that, and it was like being in Indiana Jones. It was like getting to experience the adventure alongside Indy in a way that I don't really think any other attraction has done quite as well. You could argue Rise of the Resistance does it almost as well. We all have different loves. I like Indy a little bit better than Rise, but that is how I met Indiana Jones, and I have been a huge fan ever since.
Nice.
So let's dive into our largest section. Now, we are going to talk about the main attraction. This is where we discuss the film that inspired the ride beat by beat and give our authentic, completely biased reactions to this beloved property. So let's dive in. Let's get
Also, I feel like this should go without saying, but like spoiler alert, right?
absolutely.
If
Yeah.
also if you are like me and you have not yet seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, I do not feel bad for you. It's been out for 40 years. I think you've had plenty of time, and you can just be mad.
But I do think you should watch it. You should probably go and watch it rather than experience Raiders for the first time through this podcast. Now, if you watched it and you forgot it, I think you're fine to come back here and listen to this podcast. But
I don't
yeah,
know, man.
spoilers.
I don't know. Like I'm looking at my notes, and my very first note is but. So I feel like if you haven't seen it and you're just going to listen to us, we might paint a very different picture of this movie for you, and you might be disappointed. So maybe if you haven't watched it, you could never watch it after you listen to us talk about it.
I hope we don't ruin it for you either. I will also say we're going to talk about the attraction after this and spoilers for the attraction as well. So, getting into it, I'm going to give you just a couple quick facts about Raiders. So, Raiders of the Ark opened, of the Lost Ark, opened on June 12th, 1981. It was written by Lawrence Kasdan with a story by George Lucas and was directed by Steven Spielberg with a score composed by John Williams.
That's a dream team. That's the dream team right there.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I don't know that it was at the time. I think a lot of people thought that Spielberg was a little bit of a hack, and I think people thought George Lucas was a one-hit wonder. I hope people liked John Williams. I think he had a pretty substantial track record at that point, but
yeah, I think so.
But certainly the music in this movie is so iconic. It's some of I think the best cinematic music that exists. At the time when the movie launched, the top song was Kim Carnes' Betty Davis Eyes.
Betty Davis Eyes.
Yeah, all I can tell you is that from that song, like I can't remember anything else other than the melody of her just shouting.
You don't remember like she's a looker. She's a like she would just say sentences, but like really wobble at the end.
I'm gonna have.
Hey, the '80s were crazy, man. The '80s were crazy.
There's also a lot of like pop punk covers of Betty Davis Eyes that I'm maybe a little more familiar with because of who I am as a person.
Sure.
The top movie at the box office the week before Raiders opened was Clash of the Titans, which I think the gap in quality between Raiders and Clash of the Titans is substantial. It went on to make $390 million at the box office, which adjusted for inflation is $1.251 billion.
Take that, Little Mermaid.
Not New Little Mermaid. New Little Mermaid's amazing, and
the New Little Mermaid has made what that made in its opening weekend. In this opening weekend,
that's true, but not adjusted for inflation.
But in 20 years, we'll be talking about that. So
I looked up what some comparable films were, like what else by today's standards makes that amount of money. I was very disappointed. The comparable films in terms of money made are the Beauty and the Beast live action remake and The Incredibles 2.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay.
I didn't realize the Beauty and the Beast live action remake had made that much money. It was like one of the first remakes that was done moderately well, like filmed in an okay way. So I wonder if that is why it did so well, but we saw a lot of bad remakes before and after that. All right, I have a few fun facts for you guys, just to give you a little bit of context. Hold on. Let me get my notes. Tom Selleck was the original choice for Indiana Jones. He had to bow out of
that would have
been
good.
Yeah, I watched a screen test and it was weird. It's not bad. It's just now Harrison Ford is so ingrained in what your mind's idea of Indiana Jones is, that it felt strange to watch Tom Selleck doing it. Tom Selleck had to bow out a few weeks before filming because of his schedule with Magnum PI. I got to say, I don't think that was the right career move, but, we all have to make tough choices. And Harrison Ford was selected just 3 weeks before the camera started rolling on this movie. He had almost no time to prepare and honestly kind of like knocked it out of the park. Similar story. You will not believe who was supposed to play Sala.
John Goodman.
I'm not sure.
Am I close? Am I close?
I'm not sure if it's more crazy than John Goodman, but it's close to that crazy. Danny DeVito was supposed to play the role of Sala, but he was busy filming Taxi, the TV show at the time.
I do not want to be a part of this podcast anymore. Like if those are the facts that we're going to be sharing with the world, I don't know if in good conscience we can do that. Danny DeVito as Sala, get out.
I know. I'm glad we were spared that. I hope in that version Sala did not have the accent, because I don't think that would have been great. And then let's talk a little bit about our heroine, Marion. She was originally, the part was offered to several people: Maureen McCormick, Marsha Brady from the Brady Bunch, Amy Irving, Jane Seymour, Deborah Winger, Mary Steenburgen, Valerie Bertinelli, Sean Young, Dee Wallace.
Valerie Bertinelli.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Indiana Jones, what are you doing here? I love lemons. Like, could you just imagine? Valerie Bertinelli.
A deep cut from Kids Bake Off for people who don't watch that show. Valerie Bertinelli is a judge on that show, and the kids know she likes lemons, and so she has to eat lemon crap in every episode. It's that's basically the only fact anyone knows about her. And then Barbara Hershey. Sean Young actually was the original choice to play opposite Tom Selleck, and I'm not really sure why she bowed out, but they ended up going with Karen Allen, and we all benefit for that, I think.
Okay. All right. Question.
Yes.
What's your favorite Karen Allen movie?
Scrooged.
I think you know what mine's. It's Scrooged. It's Scrooged.
Yeah,
peak of her career, like flawless performance in Scrooge.
This is a close. I love Marion as a character, but her character in Scrooged, I think, like makes me cry. Like she looks so lovable in that movie. You can't beat Karen Allen in Scrooge.
All right, I'm back on the pod. Now that we agreed about Karen Allen.
All right. So we open our story with an absolutely stunning transition from the Paramount logo to the mountains of a South American jungle.
That was cool.
It is 1936. I have a fun fact here that Steven Spielberg actually had this dream as a little kid when he was making home movies in his backyard of this exact shot of the Paramount logo and it transitioning into this logo in South America, or this mountain in South America.
What a weird thing to dream about as a kid.
I think he must really have loved movies. I mean, it's
what a
obvious
nerd.
in the movies that he makes that he loves them, but that was like a thing that he really wanted to have happen. So we follow a group of ragtag archaeologists and local guides as they trek through dense vegetation. Amongst our archaeologist crew is a very young future Doc Ock, Alfred Molina.
I forgot. I have a note that says, I forgot that Alfred Molina was ever young.
It's so true. In my head, Alfred Molina is always Dr. Octopus age.
He's always 50 or 60, like constantly.
Yeah, who has had a rich career in his life, but this is actually his first cinematic appearance. To me, an absolutely insane thing about this is that Alfred Molina has a title credit in this movie.
And was in it for 2 seconds.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a minute here. But Alfred Molina has noticed that the woods have recently been visited by poison dart shooting natives, and he will spend most of the next 10 minutes begging to leave, trying to convince Indiana Jones that they should not be doing this. They should turn back. It's not worth it. Meanwhile, while attempting to secure his donkey to a tree, one of the local guides uncovers a screaming fertility god, responds by screaming in fear, making way for the fedora crown silhouette of our hero, Dr. Henry Jones, better known as Indiana Jones Jr. To all of us here. You can call him Indy if you're nasty, and we probably will.
Do we ever know, because I don't think it was ever explained in this movie, but maybe it is in a future one, like, do we know why he's called Indiana? Like, did Ohio Jones just not roll off the tongue?
Yes, we
Illinois
do know.
Jones wasn't as badass as Indiana Jones.
Yeah, so they talk about this in Last Crusade. He picks the name Indiana Jones because he kind of thinks it's a badass name, but it's also the name of their family dog. And that is actually a true story. So Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were trying to come up with a name for the character, and I think they had a different name. It was like Nevada Smith. It was something really strange, but then Nevada Smith was a character that existed already in another, I think, a Steve McQueen movie or something like that. And someone they knew had a dog named Indiana, and so they picked Indiana as the first name. And then they literally were just like, what's a generic common surname? And they picked Jones. And that's how we got Indiana Jones.
Okay.
A very fitting name, though, for the character. I like it.
Well, sure.
So after a brief whip-cracking interaction with a member of the team who attempts to steal Indy's map, we see Indiana Jones face undeniable peril. First, he is covered in tarantulas.
Spiders. That's what I have. A lot of spiders.
A lot of spiders. A fun behind-the-scenes fact about the spider sequence, that basically they covered Alfred Molina and all of these spiders, and they didn't do anything. And Steven Spielberg was like, they got to move. How do we get the spiders to be more active? And the spider handler was like, well, they're all males. If we bring a female in here, they'll go crazy. And he was like, great, do that. And Alfred Molina's like,
what if we didn't?
What if we didn't? And then they do it. They all go crazy. Steven Spielberg starts rolling the cameras. He's like, okay, Alfred, act scared. And he's like, I don't have to act scared. I am scared. I do not like this. No, not for me. Anyway, so he first encounters the spiders, and then he is completely unfazed by this. He evades traps with spikes. He swings across pits with his whip. There's tile-triggered dart guns, and finally he comes upon a small gold fertility idol. Indiana attempts to swap the idol with a bag of sand.
Okay, that was so funny to me, because you see him do the sand at the beginning, and he puts it in a little bag. And me, I'm like, oh, that's weird. I don't know. Maybe there's fire or something coming up. I don't know. And then he's just guessing at weight. He just looks at it and goes, I think this bag, and then takes a handful out. which clearly was the wrong move based on what happens next. But I just love this idea of like, yeah, I'm gonna measure by just looking at a thing I'm not gonna touch yet
A thing
and
that
figure
no
out
one has
its weight.
touched in 1,000 years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about this heavy. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It's so weird.
What a
Such a weird
weirdo.
thing. So where am I? Okay. This doesn't work. This bag swap shocking doesn't work. And this triggers all of the traps and the temple begins to crumble around them. While they attempt to escape the temple, Doc Ock crosses the aforementioned pit using Indiana's whip. And he promises to trade him Indiana Jones' safe passage if he throws him the idol. For some reason, Indiana Jones believes this, throws Alfred Molina the idol, and he's like, "Peace out, dog.
Deuces.
I'm leaving." Runs off, leaves the whip behind, and Indy basically makes the choice that he's going to jump across this giant pit. He narrowly escapes by grabbing a tree root and successfully evades a falling stone door. On the other side of said stone door, we see Doc Ock has perished. So Alfred Molina,
You can't just keep calling him Doc Ock.
He's Doc Ock.
I'm sure that's not his name.
His name is Alfred Molina.
No, everyone. But what's his character name?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, maybe it is Doc Ock. I don't know. Maybe I stand corrected.
And I don't know that it matters because he's dead.
He's dead now. Also, like, when he's dead and we see him dead, was that mannequin supposed to be Alfred Molina? Because it looked nothing like Alfred Molina. Yeah, it looked like Spirit Halloween in a Sears showed up on set.
This movie has some remarkable practical effects and some very bad ones. And I would say dead Alfred Molina is not one of the better effects that we see in this movie. So he grabs the idol. He's able to reclaim it because Alfred Molina's dropped it on the ground. He then hears rumbling and realizes that he is being chased by a giant spherical boulder.
Boulder. Okay, listen. I feel like, okay, because my only sort of knowledge about this prior to the movie was the attraction, and the boulder is the finale.
Yeah,
and so the boulder
early in this movie.
The boulder happened, and I was like, "Is this movie 10 minutes long? Like, did I pretend Karen Allen was in this? Because the boulders happened, so obviously we're done, you know?
Yeah,
and it happened so early, and like, it's such a big part of the attraction, and nary a whisper of Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark thing. So
yeah, it's true. It's true that, you know, when you think about it's probably the most iconic 10 minutes in cinematic history. Everything we think of when we think of Indiana Jones is in this first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, the rest of the movie, and we'll get into this, is essentially just a James Bond film. Like, it follows the same beats as a James Bond movie for the most part. But this first 10 minutes is so iconic and so sort of unique and one of a kind that it built the whole franchise, in my opinion. So once Indiana Jones escapes the boulder and is out of the tunnel, he encounters the native Jovitos and his archaeological nemesis, Rene Balok.
That's so stupid. That's such a stupid thing. Have an archaeological nemesis. What, I dig better than you?
Yeah,
so stupid.
It is. There were a number of times when I was writing the notes for our podcast where I was like, this is a crazy sentence. Archaeological nemesis is an insane thing to write down on a piece of paper. Like, also that there's just so much like excitement and corruption and whatever. And I know a couple archaeologists, and they are boring. They definitely, like, they are not people who are out there swinging whips and getting into crazy adventures. Like, a lot of them have told me the reason they got into it is because they loved Indiana Jones. But that is a wild thing, that there's like there's a good archaeologist and a bad archaeologist, which I have thoughts there. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Anyway, Rene Balok, who steals the idol from Indy, he has this moment where he's like, "There's nothing you possess that I cannot take." A thing he's going to say a lot in this movie. And he has basically gotten the help of the local natives. He starts doing his victory lap. He starts monologuing at Indiana Jones. And he's like, I took this from you, and now you're going to die because you picked the wrong people to align yourself with. And for us as the audience, this really secures Indiana Jones as the underdog in this movie. I don't really think we would think of him as an underdog if it wasn't for the existence of Balok, because he's incredibly handsome, very successful. He basically gets everything he wants throughout the entire movie, and he just has to have this person who's just a little bit better than him to have any kind of foil in this entire plot. You're looking at me crazy.
Well, just like, I still don't believe Indiana Jones is the underdog. The movie's named after him, for God's sake. He has a whole franchise.
Technically, the movie is Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Indiana Jones was not added until it became a franchise. But I see your point. Yes.
Also, Balok sucks.
Balok does suck for many reasons, which we will get into. Belloc. We keep saying it wrong. It's Belloc.
Belloc sounds like something from The Exorcist. I'm going to say Balok because it's less scary.
And it's Baruch, so don't fix it. There you go. So Indiana narrowly escapes under spear and dart fire from the local natives, calls out to his pilot friend, Jock Lindsay, Disney World aficionados will know Jock Lindsay from his restaurant that exists in Disney Springs.
And if you're a complete and utter nerd, you know that Jock Lindsay is a member of SEA, the Society of Explorers and Adventurers.
That's true.
Which is all I wanted to add about that.
Do you want to say what that is? Because maybe not everyone knows what that is.
So the Society of Explorers and Adventurers is this sort of lore that Disney has created. I don't know what its original purpose was, but what it does functionally is it links a lot of different attractions and properties together. So there's a lot of people. The name is escaping me because I didn't know this would be a pop quiz, but like Jock Lindsay's a part of it. The new lore around Jungle Cruise, and I forget her name. I think her name is like Ocean Wave or something like that.
Alberta Falls.
Alberta Falls. That Ocean Wave? Yeah. What is that? That's a Sonic drink. Alberta Falls is part of it, so it ties Jungle Cruise and Indy together. Lord Mystic of Mystic Manor in Hong Kong is part of it, and so it sort of ties us together. And the idea is that these characters are part of this society that goes on adventures and is all about exploring. And it's really fun. And there used to be a lot more nods to it in Disneyland. Maybe we just do a whole separate thing about that at one point, but
we'll definitely have a Jungle Cruise podcast where we talk about the Jungle Cruise movie too. And SEA plays a big part in that.
A big part in that. So anyway, the only other thing I want to say about Jock Lindsay. Did you notice the back of his shirt, girl? Did you see what the back of his shirt said?
I didn't. What is it?
The back of Jock Lindsay's shirt says Air Pirate, and you cannot tell me that if you put Air Pirate on the back of a Spirit jersey and sold that at the Adventureland Bazaar, that it would not sell out.
Do you think people know though? Because I've never noticed that before, and I've seen this movie many times.
Maybe, as a wise man told me, you just weren't paying attention.
That's true. Maybe I'm just a fake fan, and I didn't.
Fake fan.
So they end up narrowly escaping on the airplane. And just an important call out here: whilst in the airplane, we meet Reggie, who is Jock Lindsay's pet snake. If you have ever been to Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar, Reggie is referenced several times in that restaurant. Also, I'm a huge fan of Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar at Disney Springs in Florida. You should absolutely go, particularly if you're a fan of this franchise, and get the charcuterie pretzel. It's
great.
10 out of 10. Anyway, Reggie, his pet snake, is in the plane, and we find out that Indy has one fear, and it is snakes. He does not like them. This is the man who brushed off spiders, is completely unfazed, saw multiple corpses within the last 20 minutes, and he's like,
totally fine.
I don't hang with snakes. That's not for me. So
So then they get back, right? They get back to, is this supposed to be like the University of Chicago or something like that? Like he teaches in the States.
Yeah. So we transition to the college where a classroom of nearly all smitten young women swoon over Indiana Jones as he lectures to the class. Same. I would,
I would not call that a lecture. He was bragging. If you look at what's on the thing, he's like mapping out where he was with the fertility idol and like talking about what he's doing. And I'm just like, ooh,
oh.
that is douchebag professor energy. That
Was
is
he
like,
talking about that? Because I thought the whole thing with that is that he doesn't really tell people what he does when he's not in the classroom. I thought he was talking more about like native history and lore, and
I
because it
mean,
doesn't seem to be related.
he's definitely drawing a map out on the blackboard,
Yeah,
and
for
he's
sure.
talking
Yeah.
like when it comes in and the audio comes in on the room, he's like, and then I had to jump from here to here, and this was covered in like something. So I guess
Oh,
maybe I made the leap to assume that he was talking,
no,
and maybe
you're
I
right.
called Professor Jones a douchebag unnecessarily.
He is a little bit of a douche for many reasons in this movie, but he's still very. I cannot say it enough. It's very hot man.
Very hot, and honestly, having tenure is super hot. We
To
love
the
that for her. We love that for
to
her.
the you can tell who on this podcast is an academic, but the this lust for Indy is so prevalent that there is a girl in the classroom who has written "Love You" on her eyelids.
That's a serve.
um
I'm doing that to you at some point. I'm going
I
to do
have
that to you at some point.
I have so many questions. How did she write that on her eyes? Did she have
She had a
someone do
friend
it
do
for
it. She had a
her?
friend do it. She had a friend do it.
Did she have to do it in the backwards, like where she had to like in the mirror and write them backwards on one eye at a time, and she just got lucky? Like, it's not done particularly well, so I could believe like that. It didn't. It wasn't easy. She struggled.
Yeah.
But we love the girl with the "Love You" eye makeup. She's absolutely an icon. So at the tail end of his lecture, his close friend Marcus Brody enters and audits the classroom in its final moments. He jokes with Indy about the less than ethical means of artifact retrieval that he has taken in the past. And then there's a little bit of joking about how Belloc has taken the item that he had gone there to get. Shortly after that, he's like, "Oh, there's some army intelligence bros out back and they want to talk to you." And so these two government officials talk to Indy in the other room. They introduce him really weirdly. They're like, "Indiana Jones, master of the occult," or something. I'm like, whoa, we dove to some weird places right away. And they basically disclose that Hitler has archaeology teams all over the world, but specifically Cairo, looking for rare religious artifacts. Specifically, they are looking to acquire a headpiece to the staff of Ra, which they believe is in the lost city of Tanis. Um, Basically, to break this down, this this headpiece of the staff of Ra is a medallion that, when placed on a particular stick in a certain room at a certain time of day, will reveal the location of the Ark of the Covenant, which is the device that was used to carry, I think they say, the Ten Commandments down from the mountain.
Yeah, the
Um,
actual Ten Commandments.
Yes, yeah, in the Bible. So we're talking about a box. This is the box that was a fancy book sleeve. Um, God's Scholastic Book Fair sleeve. That's
I
what
wonder if
this
there were
is.
scented erasers.
Center, yeah, absolutely. I would assume. In what world would there not be?
That'd be cool.
Um,
So are you gonna? Sorry, I'm probably getting ahead of you. Although you are ahead of where I am in my notes, so maybe not.
okay,
Is
okay.
this where they talk about Ravenwood?
Mm-hmm.
Abner Ravenwood?
That's what I was just about to get to.
Because the thing in my head that this isn't true. I looked it up. This is not true. But I want it to be true really badly, so I'm going to use my podcast to talk about it. I want Abner Ravenwood to be a Phantom Manor tie-in. and I want Melanie Ravenwood to be Marion's sister.
Okay, I love that.
I want that to happen really badly.
I was trying to place where like Ravenwood felt so familiar, and I just assumed it was because I love this. But when I was watching, I was like, Ravenwood, that's something else. And you're right. The family in Phantom Manor, which is the Paris version of Haunted Mansion, is named the Ravenwood family. There's a whole story there. We'll talk about that in another pod. We don't have time today, but yes, I'm with you. That would be great if they were connected in that way, because I think that's also tied to SEA, right? I think that whole story, the Mystic Manor or the Phantom Manor, is also tied to SEA because that company that builds the railroad is
Thunder
part of
Mesa.
Thunder Mesa.
Yeah,
I think the owners are part of that.
Okay, listen, we got to get back on the Indiana Jones train.
We got to get back on. We got to get back to Raiders.
We got to get back to it.
We're still in the first 10 minutes of this movie, and we are 40 minutes in.
Buckle up.
So, this device is, like I said, it's basically a fancy book sleeve, and it can level mountains by wielding the power of God and rendering any army who carries it invincible. So you can see why Hitler...
Yeah, it sounds like a thing the Nazis would want, right?
Yeah, Hitler's way up into it because of that, for obvious reasons. So a former colleague of Indy's, Abner Ravenwood, is the preeminent expert on the subject, but he has gone missing and is assumed to be working with the Nazis. So later, while in some very sexy jammies, Indy and Marcus discuss Ravenwood's daughter, Marion, and we're given our first hint that there is history between the two of them.
Ooh, histoire.
Yes, sexy history. So I looked this up, and there's a weird fact that the reason that Indy is dressed like sexy robe, open shirt, is that there was originally a scene where he was entertaining a woman in the bedroom, and they did this because George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were like, oh, it'll make him more Bond-like.
Ew, but, gross. I hate that.
Yeah, really. Ultimately, this was scrapped, but sexy Indiana Jones is still in the film, which I like it better this way. I like it that he's just like, I'm here to show you my chest, Marcus. And I want you to enjoy that. I want you to enjoy it. Because Marcus does. You know that he does.
Yeah, and the 30s were like a wild time,
Yeah. So Indy boards a plane to Nepal, where Ravenwood was last seen. As a note for this, he's seated next to what I'm going to call Captain Nazi, who is from the House of Nazis, who is
Nazi down boots.
Yeah, literally reading a magazine that's like how to be a Nazi. Like it's so glaringly obvious that he is a Nazi. And Indiana Jones is like, that's cool. They did say Nazis were after the same thing as me, but I'm going to just take a little nippy nap on this flight. Which the man could be wearing an I Love Eugenics hat, and Indy would not bat an eye. As unfazed. This leads us to the mountains of Nepal, where at a small but densely populated bar, we encounter the light of our lives, of everyone's life, Karen Allen. Karen Allen. She is locked in a drinking contest, which she immediately wins. Just absolutely obliterates the competition.
She's a bad bitch. She's a bad bitch.
That's right. Everyone abandons the bar. So this leaves her and Indiana Jones, who suddenly appears, to quite literally have a fist fight about their love affair, where we discover that Indy broke Marion's heart. She owns the bar, and her father, Abner, has died. And then she initially claims that she sold the headpiece to the staff of Ra. So that's what we're meant to think.
I think she's a liar, and that's why Derek don't like her.
She's a liar. It's true. She's, as we're very clearly going to find out in but a mere moment. So Indy doesn't believe her. He offers her $5,000 for the medallion. There's this argument. They go back and forth, and then she kicks him out and says, come back the next day. Indy leaves, and we see that Marion is still in possession of the medallion.
This was the most frustrating part.
Yeah, she pulls the medallion out. She's been wearing it around her neck, and then she just sets it down on a table.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, you know what these candlesticks need is some ambiance from this thing everybody's after."
Yeah, she's like, let me position this on a table so that anyone can see it. It's only my most prized possession. She
was tablescaping before Sandra Lee and Martha Stewart were tablescaping, just
Absolutely.
with like stolen relics.
Absolutely. Is what you're saying that Sandra Lee and Martha Stewart stole tablescaping from Marion, from Karen Allen specifically?
Well, I think that Karen Allen does it more like table escaping. And Martha Stewart was like, "Oh, I'm gonna take." Don't boo to this man. And then I think Martha Stewart was like, "If you don't have stolen Egyptian artifacts, store bought is fine." Oh, that's Ina Garten.
Yes, that's Ina
okay.
Garten.
Well, same thing.
Well,
not really.
So she puts it on the table, and then who should wander in but Captain Nazi from
that's the guy that turns into a computer in Captain America.
That's that it's not the same guy, but it is close. The character interpretations are very similar for sure. I love that you remember that. It's a deep cut from the Marvel universe, which you also don't love the Marvel movies that much.
Yeah, but I like when people turn into computers.
I mean, sure, why not? So she, the Nazi guy is like, "Oh, I'm not thirsty. We are here for the medallion," and she basically lies to him. He gets super pissed off, and then is like, "I'm going to take this hot poker and put it in her mouth," I think is what we're meant to think is about to happen.
Yeah, gross.
It's pretty horrific. I don't know why these choices were made, but she's given sass to a Nazi, which she's also like, "I don't know where you're from, hair something," but like she's I'm like, I think
Mac, doesn't she call him?
Yeah,
Hair Mac.
Yeah, well, I don't know where you're from, Hair Mac, and I was like,
well, I think
I think he's from Germany, Marion. I think we all know that. I think we can tell he's from Germany. I think you know that. I think you're just antagonizing him. Anyway, right before the hot poker makes its way to her mouth, we hear the crack of a whip and a gun, and Indy has barged in to save the day.
Bum.
Exactly. And basically, there's a whole gunfight that occurs here, which I don't know that I remembered this movie being this violent, but
oh my god, it's so violent.
So many people die. So many people get super murdered. And basically during the scuffle, a log falls out of the fire and the bar catches fire. The Nazi sees the medallion has fallen onto the ground, grabs it with his bare hand, and it burns his flesh.
Okay, so, I was confused at this point.
Okay.
Because I was like, okay, is he like, I didn't see it fall into the fire or anything, so I'm like, is this just like spooky oldie-timey magic? Like, did the Egyptians also hate Nazis, or?
No, I mean, I'm sure that they did, but in a world where they existed in the same time frame. But no, it was hot. It had been heated by the fire and then scalded his hand. He runs out into the snow and then plunges his fist into the ice. Marion and Indy narrowly escape the bar, where Marion basically says, you just burned down my bar. All my savings was in there, and you're going to get more than you bargained for because you're my partner until I get my $5,000.
She said, boss bitch.
I mean, I don't blame her. He did kind of like ruin her night. She was just trying to have a drinking contest with some old lady in the mountains of Nepal, as one does. And then Indiana Jones.
She was truly living with the land.
Truly living with the land, yes. So cut to Cairo. This is where we meet Indy's best friend, Sala.
Okay, at this point, I have to tell you my Sala interaction.
Okay.
You know that Leonardo DiCaprio meme from that Quentin Tarantino Hollywood movie where he like sits up and points at the TV?
Yes, yeah.
That was me, and I was like, "You're the guy from the ride."
Yes.
Why are you saying hello, my friend, and telling me not to look into the eye and to buckle up?
Yeah, to insert the right end into the left. An ingenious invention, no?
He does that laugh. I love that.
So, Sala, Indy proclaims, is the best digger in Egypt, which is not really a compliment. I like, oh, you're really good at digging holes? Okay.
So were the kids in holes, Indy. What's your point?
Yeah, yeah. And we find that Sala has like 7 kids, a thing I did not remember, and a pet monkey for some reason.
I fucking hate this monkey.
We're gonna get into it, but the monkey is the worst. The monkey is a bad part of this movie that we'll get there. So Sala reveals that the Nazis have hired basically every strong hand in Egypt to help them dig, but they have no idea what they're doing, save for one, a French archaeologist. Dun dun dun. Belloc. So Sala
I feel like could they not have given him like a more French name? You know, like, oh, it's your arch nemesis, Jean-Pierre Poudre-Poisson, like Belloc. Well, that sounds like what what's her name? What The Exorcist screams.
Sure. And I think like that's why I keep wanting to call him Belloc, because I'm like, at least Belloc sounds a little bit more French, but
Belloc.
It's definitely Belloc. So Sala says he can find a man to help them decode the markings on the medallion, but he believes that the Ark is not meant to be disturbed by man, and it is an object surrounded by death. Yeah, and of course, typical white guy, Indiana Jones is like, nah, I think we can mess around with it. They're not talking about me. They're talking about somebody else. Shouldn't be touching it. It's fine if I do that.
I work in a museum. Like,
yeah,
come on.
So then we exit the bar and head into the marketplace. So, in an absolutely insane twist, we discover following this conversation that the monkey is a Nazi.
And I don't know how we could have gotten to this absolutely bonkers point in this movie.
And I got to tell you, I must have washed this from my brain, but I have had no idea that this plot existed. Like, I vaguely remembered a monkey, but I was like, oh, he's only in it like for 1 or 2 scenes. No, the monkey is
it's a Nazi
antagonist. Like,
he's a Nazi.
He's a Nazi. And I was doing a little bit of reading about this, and apparently George Lucas taught the monkey how to do the Nazi salute. And I was like,
I hate that.
That is not the flex you think it is, George. Like, what a weird thing for you to do.
George Lucas really does have a thing about Nazis, right? Like, Star Wars was space Nazis.
Yeah.
This is actual Nazis and monkey Nazis.
I was floored by.
I wonder if he's seen a therapist.
I doubt it. So basically, the Nazi monkey is helping the Nazis track down Marion and Indy through the Cairo marketplace. I am very unclear on how the monkey is able to reveal information to human beings, but it happens several times where the monkey's like, monkey noise and looking at a person and they're like, got it, chief. And then they follow Marion and Indy down some random road. I'm like, how did the monkey tell you that?
Yeah, it's definitely like an Abu Aladdin situation, but the evil version.
Yeah, I could not believe that this was a real thing that was happening. I was like, okay, I somehow blocked all of this out. Nevertheless, Indy and Marion are attacked by a mob of stuntmen, many of whom have their faces covered and look scary. Not very Egyptian. We're again asked to suspend our belief about some of these locals. And during this, there's like a variety of really insane interactions. There's like a Looney Tunes moment where Marion gets a frying pan and bonks a guy over the head with it, and then drags his body into a closet.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, we're doing camp in this movie, and I think a lot of people criticize later entries in the franchise for being too silly, and I don't think I realized just how silly this one is. There's like a lot of genuinely silly things.
But I feel like the silliness is misplaced. Like the silliness should have been that scene in the woven baskets where like it's the cup game, right? And it's like they're following one basket and all of a sudden it's the woven basket parade for some reason. But like I half expected when she threw that guy in the closet for him to come out dressed in drag, like a la Bugs Bunny. Like what's happening here, George? Tell me.
Yeah, in getting to the basket thing, Marion climbs into a basket to sort of evade the men who are chasing her, and the monkey tells the other people that she's in a particular basket. Again, don't know how. I'm like, this is the world's smartest monkey. I don't get it. So she shouts this really terrible thing. The mob picks up the basket she's in, and she is like, "You can't do this to me. I'm an American." And I was like, "Barf." I just what did you think that was gonna do, Marion? Also, haven't you been living in Nepal for like 6 years? Like, how American are you, sis?
Yeah, well, show me your card, you McCarthy era lady. Well, McCarthy was much later, but
McCarthy, I think, plays a role though in Crystal Skull. I think they talk about McCarthy in that movie, but
sure.
Just such this is a kind of insane sequence. We see Indy face off against this sword wielding assassin. He does all these fancy tricks, and in this very iconic moment, Indy just shoots him.
Shoots him, and I said, "Okay, that kill was funny."
Yeah, it is. It's very funny. The story behind this, it's kind of a Hollywood legend, is that Harrison Ford had gotten food poisoning and was feeling really, really terrible from sort of the heat of being in Tanzania, and was about to pass out. And he was like, "I cannot fight this person. Can I just shoot him?" And they were like, George was like, "No, I don't like it. We'll just reshoot it another time." But they shoot the scene of him obviously shooting the guy. And then they showed it to a test audience and they went wild. And George Lucas is like, "I guess we'll keep
I guess we do that now."
But, yet again, Indy just murders a guy. It is like, okay. And we're like, yay, murder. Like, that's meant to be our response. So crazy. Marion's basket is picked up and thrown into the back of a truck. This truck we see is full of dynamite for some reason. There's like, it's just filled to the brim with explosives. And this truck derails, it crashes, and explodes. Wow, these nerds sure do have a lot to talk about. Well, we are going to cut off this episode here. We did run long, so feel free to check out episode 2 where we discuss the conclusion of Raiders of the Lost Ark. We go into the history of the theme park attractions, and we make a pitch for our very own take on an Indiana Jones attraction in 1 minute. And it's a lot of fun. We hope that you will listen to our second episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, be sure to give us a high rating. It really helps us out in the podcast algorithm. Be sure to subscribe. And we cannot wait to see you on the next Lights, Camera, Attractions. Bye.